My today's guest is a real opera superstar, a mezzo-soprano with one of the richest and most colorful voices of nowadays, Elīna Garanča. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Looking at your artistic biography, I would say that it's a very unusual one. If I consider that you have been singing your first Carmen with 34, and your first Oboe with 40, and Wagner, first of your Wagner you sang last year.
Yes.
This looks like you really take care about the development of voice.
I do. In fact, I really do. But not only it's protecting the voice, it is the strategy of the career, which I believe it's. You know, the voice needs time for certain repertoire, or at least my voice. There are voices and voices, you know. But I always said that even if you have the most dramatic voice ever, or you have the most lyric voice ever, you still need to think about the career on long terms. And it's very exciting, of course, to sing the most wonderful roles at a very young age, you know, because you think I'm powerful, I'm strong, I can conquer the world. But in 10 years, which is the average, 10, 15 years is the average successful singer's career, it's over very often because then you have technical problems and the nature has gone and everything. So step by step and keeping the public interested and keeping the theaters interested needs not only voice, but the strategy of how to build up the career.
Did you have to fight lots with the agents? Because I'm sure they offered you everything possible when you made your breakthrough.
Well, I think that they learned relatively early that I'm stubborn. And, you know, when I say I don't do this, then they know that I don't do this. And my agents actually were very supportive in my decisions. And I always told them, I will tell you when I'm ready to take a new role, because I will be either bored of the previous one or I will technically feel I can do it. And I will tell you, now in 2-3 years, let's try to schedule it.
But you were saying exactly the thing I heard just recently from a very important agent. He said, like, you know, if you are picking up new singers who are starting their careers, we just count 5, maximally if they're really lucky 10 years, and we don't care what happens after that. So young girls are being offered Amelia or, you know, even Oboe with 23, 24. And the thing that I am really being worried as a conductor is that they are mixing up the facts. They let you sing even Butterfly if you're white.
Yes, I think it's not only the fault of agencies in the theaters, it's also the fault of the teachers who is teaching and who is allowing actually a young singer to think that it is possible, you know. We are, you know, educated to sing on the opera stage, and in theory, there is not dramatic change between singing romantic music and dramatic music, so to say, you know. There is a technical possibilities that you can adjust, and there is a style that you need to know how to sing Puccini and how to sing the Mozart. And of course, if you have a louder voice or more sonor voice and the round voice, you have a temptation, and probably in the lyric dramatic repertoire you will feel more at home, but there are technicalities that you need to learn. And I always said, for me at least, and I'm speaking to a lot of my colleagues, the most complicated style that I've ever done is bel canto, because there is so much that you need to know how to do. And everything else comes automatically afterwards. And not for nothing, a good bel canto singer can become a very good Verdi singer and eventually can sing the Wagner, but no Wagner singer can ever sing bel canto, at least I don't know of any of them. I believe that when you are a young singer, to be boxed and say, you're a Mozart singer, you're a Strauss singer, you are, I don't know what, bel canto singer, it limits your development because everybody will offer you only that. At the moment when I told them I'm gonna sing Carmen, I didn't get any other offer, just the Carmen. When I announced that I'm gonna be doing the first Kundry now, you have no idea how many Wagner roles have become now on my schedule, you know, shall I do them, shall I not do it? I said, no, I don't want them to do that yet, because I don't want to immediately take away everything that I've done and just limit myself to this one particular genre or the style of that. And I also think a young singer, until you're at least 27, 28 or 30, you don't know really what you are.
Exactly.
Because you've finished your school, your teacher is there, you just started. So I wouldn't say that limiting yourself at the very beginning is good anyway. I mean, and if you look 50, 60 years ago, everybody sang everything, you know, there wasn't such a limitation for that. The only thing is now the orchestras has become louder, and the theaters also in comparison have become bigger. If you go through the majority of Italian theaters, there are 1,000, 1,200, maybe 1,500 places. Now if you think about theaters like London or like Munich with a double, triple the size, you need to produce a certain amount of noise to be heard.
And do you believe if you sing for such big spaces that it also very much influences the technique back? Because I heard from many singers who came from small theaters to bigger ones that they started, to have different feeling, and also the pronunciation got a different, touch.
Yes, for sure. There is a certain volume, not force, volume that you need to adjust. But even the greatest and biggest spaces like Arena di Verona or like Teatro Colón, who are massive, if you really know how to sing, it carries, and even the smallest pianissimo will carry. It has nothing really to do with the size of the voice very often. Of course, it's more impressive to have a big voice resonate stuff, but also audience get tired of the big voices. You need to take audience, in my opinion, by the hand and take them. I'm gonna take you on the trip. It's not that I'm gonna just sing to you and sing and and you're gonna hear me all the time. The audience needs to lean forwards and to listen and to catch the voice, And for that you need a technique. For that you need variation of colors, of gestures, of pauses, of musical dynamics to be effective also and be interesting for an audience.
And you need also a clever conductor who can work with the orchestra.
That helps.
Have you ever walked out of a production because of the staging?
It has been since very, very beginnings of my career when I became a freelance. I understood whilst I was in ensemble in Meiningen and in Frankfurt and Vienna that I am not somebody who wants to be on the front line. It's not my character. And I'm grateful that I'm a mezzo-soprano because, as you well know, the mezzo-soprano is usually number 2 or 3, maybe 4 even in the evening. You have a great, pieces like Inverter, where the Charlotte becomes extremely important, but it's not the title role, So I very much enjoyed of just being Anna Bolena. You have a fantastic rivalries, but I don't carry the pressure of being the soprano. So that has been always a wonderful thing for me. No, really, and that is my character. So when I was working in a theater, I realized I want to make an ensemble. I want to work with the people, and I really want to know who's going to be there. And since the very beginning, I always asked, if I got a production, I said, who is the stage director, who is the main cast, and who is the conductor? Those 3 issues were always. And then either I said, I can do it or I cannot do it. And if they said, this is a director, and I don't know him, I always looked on the YouTube, somewhere went to the theaters to see the productions, asked my colleagues, did you work, did you not work, and what was the problems? And then I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I knew, and that there are a couple of stage directors which are, let's say, liberate in their expressions, and me thinking that I probably would see the character in a different way, or I could not do anything with that production. I say, well, thank you very much. I prefer to take some other job. So, of course, you have sometimes, briberies. That's normal. We are all wanting to create something there. But, I had never left, like banging the door and saying, I'm going. Never. I don't believe in that bad karma.
You're having an academy for young singers who are coming to you to work with you here in Austria.
Well, I wish that it's going to be at some point really academy. At this very moment, it's like a competition, and then whoever is winning there, I take them by hand and I try to guide them and take them, on this trip. I do work with them on the technical things. The winners, they get my phone and my email, and they can call me and ask me any questions they want to. And really, I try to, for those youngsters, sometimes maybe not to make a decision, but to listen to possibilities, what their decision might bring or not. And it's really very, very interesting and curious because, I'm still active in this business. I know a lot of intendants. I know nearly every agent, who, let's say, is bringing out from the big agencies now, the artists, and what the theaters are looking for, how conductors like to work, you know. And very often these young singers, they finish the academy and suddenly after the competition they have an offer to go to the opera studio, maybe to go to the smaller theater. The agents suddenly have written, you know, and they call me, well, what shall I do? And then I say, well, what do you feel about this and this? So we have these long conversations very often where they just get the information, which they never have. Where are they supposed to get that information,
exactly.
you know? And I think that in academies, regrettably, but it's I'm sure that, you know, in conducting is the same. A lot of teachers who are teaching are not actually those who have ever been on a stage in a professional theater and a business, you know? So they very often teach their vision or their imagination and their fantasy of what it is and how it is. And very often, you know, it's not anymore or not at all what it really is. I spend a lot of time working on my technique. I spend a lot of money of different coaches and teachers and pianists and you know, lessons and trips and everything. So I have to give it to somebody. I can't just die and take it with me. So, you know, when I can share it, it's very rewarding.
If I listen to you live and if I listen to your recordings, I always admire that your voice works really well with the microphone. That a lot of the qualities that I can hear live get on the recording, which is not the rule for all voices, you know. So I wanted to ask you about how you work with the mic. If you're in a studio and you're recording an opera, do you sing differently?
Well, I have to tell I hate recordings. I really hate them with all my heart because I think that they do not give me compliment to my voice. And it's been a very long process of actually getting acceptance for myself of my voice in the microphone. And I have to say that, you know, I have a sound engineer with whom I'm working now for the last several recordings already, and he knows now what I like and how I like it, so, you know, it makes it all much easier. Yeah. But every time it is a challenge because you also develop as a singer. You know, I work with my teachers, I work on a different repertoire, so making a recording every 2-3 years means that, you know, the voice has changed also, and suddenly you're like, and then you need to adjust a little bit. And of course you do make adjustments between the opera singing and microphone singing. But if I think that 95% of my life is opera, then the microphone has to, you know, take whatever I'm used to. Yeah. I'm very grateful and very happy that a lot of the music that I've done, I was able to record, and my voice is there for the history. But I always say, you know, enjoy the recordings, but please come and see me live.